His wife popped open the bottle of wine they'd been saving for their 5th anniversary. They were still 2 months out. She was smiling, way too big. Talking about open relationships, way too confident. Mark didn't say a word. He just sat there, listened, and it clicked. This wasn't a conversation about love. This was the start of something a whole lot darker. He didn't know he had exactly 43 days left, but when he found out, he didn't run. He made a different call. He decided to vanish and come back where they'd never see it coming. What's up, my dear viewer? Right now, you and I are diving headfirst into this whirlpool of family schemes, cheating, and revenge. You ready? Then buckle up. Let's ride. And hey, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The moment Mark pulled into his driveway on September 14th, 1994, his life had exactly 43 days left. He just didn't know it yet. The lawn needed mowing. A crow sat on the mailbox, watching him with that sideways stare birds give when they know something you don't. Mark grabbed his briefcase and walked toward the front door of the house he'd spent 3 years paying for in the suburb of Austin he'd chosen because Lisa said she liked the trees. Inside, the living room smelled like the jasmine candles Lisa burned when she wanted something. She stood by the dining table, 2 glasses of wine already poured. The good bottle, the one they'd been saving for their 5th anniversary, still 2 months away. Her smile had too many teeth in it. Mark set down his briefcase. Hey yourself, she said. Sit down. I want to talk about something. He sat. The wine tasted expensive and wrong, like drinking someone else's celebration. Lisa settled across from him and pressed her palms flat on the table, the way she did during her presentations at the marketing firm. Mark recognized the posture. He was about to be pitched. So I've been reading, she started, and talking to some friends, about relationships, about how couples keep things fresh after a few years. Mark sipped his wine and said nothing. There's this concept, Lisa continued. Her voice had that careful lightness, like she was explaining a new diet or exercise routine. An open marriage. It's becoming really common. Progressive couples are doing it. The idea is that you allow each other certain freedoms, and it actually brings you closer, because you're being honest, because you're choosing each other even when you have options. The crow outside screamed once and flew away. Mark watched his wife's face. 4 years of marriage. He knew every micro-expression, every tell. The way her left eye twitched slightly when she lied about finishing the ice cream. The way she touched her collarbone when she was nervous. Right now, she was doing both. He thought about the late nights at work she'd mentioned recently, the new gym membership she used at odd hours, the phone she'd started keeping face down on the nightstand. What do you think? She asked. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass stem. Mark took a long breath. The jasmine candle flickered. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed its constant low note. That's a big conversation, he said finally. Let me think about it. Lisa's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief. She'd been bracing for a fight, and the absence of one left her almost giddy. Of course, she said. Take all the time you need. I just thought we could talk about it. Be open with each other. Sure, Mark said. Open. He finished his wine in one long swallow. Lisa reached across the table and squeezed his hand, her palm slightly damp. That night, Mark lay awake until 3 in the morning. Lisa slept beside him, peaceful and still, her breathing slow and even. He stared at the ceiling fan rotating in the darkness and felt something shift in his chest. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Something colder. A door closing quietly in a room he hadn't known existed. The ceiling fan made one full rotation, then another. Mark counted them until the sun came up. 3 days passed. Mark went to work. Mark came home. Mark kissed Lisa on the cheek and asked about her day and listened to her answers with the careful attention of a man memorizing evidence. She seemed lighter now, happier, as if his non-answer had been answer enough. On the third evening, Mark needed stamps. The electric bill sat on the kitchen counter, and he remembered Lisa kept a book of them in her desk drawer. She was in the shower. Steam crept under the bathroom door. He could hear her humming something, an old song from their wedding reception. The desk drawer stuck. He yanked it. Papers scattered across the oak surface like fleeing birds, and there it was. Mark doesn't need to play being open when it's really just covering for someone else's screw-up. You're allowed to have boundaries and demand respect. And even if the truth stings, it still sets you free. Let's see what happens next. A leather journal, dark green cover, no lock. Lisa had never mentioned keeping a diary. In 4 years of marriage, through 2 apartments and this house, he'd never seen it. The shower kept running. The humming continued. Mark opened the journal to a random page. Her handwriting filled the margins, dates at the top of each entry. He flipped backward through time, August, July, June, and stopped at an entry from March 15th, 6 months ago. The words hit him in sequence, each one a separate blow. Ted came over while Em was at the conference. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. The couch. His couch. I'm a terrible person, but I don't care anymore. Mark's hands went numb. He kept reading. April 3rd. Told Ted I love him. He said it back. First time anyone said it, and I actually believed them. The shower turned off. The humming stopped. Mark flipped forward frantically, scanning pages, details he didn't want and couldn't stop absorbing. Stolen afternoons. Lies about yoga classes and work trips. Ted's name appearing over and over like a disease spreading through the pages of his marriage. Then he reached May. May 12th. Ted thinks we should tell Mark. I said no. Not yet. I'm going to suggest the open marriage thing first. Jenny from book club did it. If Em agrees, then technically I'm not cheating. It's retroactive permission. Ted laughed at that. He has a beautiful laugh. Lisa's footsteps crossed the hallway. Mark closed the journal, placed it exactly where he'd found it, pushed the drawer shut. When Lisa walked in wearing her bathrobe, toweling her hair, Mark was sitting on the edge of the bed with the stamps in his hand. Found them, he said. She smiled. Good. You okay? You look pale. Long day, Mark said. Just tired. He went to the kitchen and sealed the envelope. His hands were completely steady. He noticed this with a kind of detached surprise, the way you notice a stranger's hands doing something competent. The betrayal had passed through shock and arrived somewhere else entirely, somewhere quiet. Ted, his best friend since freshman year at UT Austin, groomsman at his wedding, poker buddy every other Thursday. Ted, who'd stood beside him when his father died and didn't say anything stupid, just handed him a beer and sat with him in silence for 2 hours. That Ted. Mark walked back through the living room. Lisa was curled on the couch now, watching television, her feet tucked under her. She looked up and smiled again. He smiled back. Something new in him now, something patient and cold, settling into his bones like winter. The next morning, Mark told Lisa he'd thought about it. Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. And, she asked. Let's do it, Mark said. You're right. It's modern. It could be good for us. Lisa set down her cup with exaggerated care, like it might shatter. Really? Really. Mark buttered his toast. He didn't look at her. Kept his movements casual, ordinary. Life's short, right? Why not try new things? She came around the table and hugged him from behind, her arms wrapped around his shoulders, her cheek against his neck. He could feel her heart racing through her bathrobe. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for being so understanding. Of course, Mark said. He patted her arm. That's what marriage is. He went to work that day and did something he'd never done before. He left early. told his supervisor he had a doctor's appointment, drove to a payphone outside a gas station on the east side of town, and called a number he'd found in the yellow pages that morning. The ad had been small and plain. Reeves Investigations. Discreet. Thorough. Licensed. A woman answered. Mark asked for Carl Reeves. Hold, please. 2 minutes later, a gravel voice. This is Carl. Mark explained what he needed. Surveillance, evidence, photos if possible. He gave Ted's name, Ted's address, a description of Lisa's car. Carl Reeves listened without interrupting. When Mark finished, Carl asked one question. You want to know how deep this goes? All the way, Mark said. That'll cost more. I don't care. Carl gave him an address. Small office park off Highway 183. Tomorrow at noon, if that worked. It worked. Mark hung up and stood in the parking lot for a while. The September heat pressed down on him like a hand. A truck rumbled past on the access road, hauling cattle somewhere. The smell of diesel and dry grass mixed in the air. He thought about Ted's face, the easy grin, the way he clapped Mark on the back after every joke, every touchdown their team scored on Sundays. 16 years of friendship, longer than he'd known Lisa, longer than most things in his life had lasted. Mark got back in his car and drove home. Lisa had made dinner, chicken parmesan, his favorite. She'd even set candles on the table, a celebration of their new arrangement, she said, their new honesty. He ate every bite and complimented her cooking and cleared the dishes while she put on music in the living room. They danced in the kitchen to a song he couldn't name afterward, her head on his shoulder, swaying in the dim light. You're being so sweet, she murmured. What's gotten into you? Just grateful, Mark said, for what we have. She pulled back and looked at his face, searching for something. He let her look. His expression gave nothing away. He'd discovered he was good at this, better than he'd ever imagined. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. She kissed him and went to bed happy. Mark stayed up watching the late news. A convenience store robbery in Dallas, a tropical storm forming in the Gulf. The weatherman predicted rain by the weekend. He turned off the television and sat in the dark. Carl Reeves looked exactly like a private investigator from a movie, which made Mark trust him less at first. The rumpled jacket, the coffee-stained desk. The Venetian blinds cutting afternoon light into slices, but his eyes were sharp, and his handshake was firm without trying to prove anything. Sit, Carl said. Mark sat. Carl opened a manila folder and spread its contents across the desk, like a card dealer laying out a losing hand. Photographs first. Lisa and Ted in a parking garage, kissing. Lisa and Ted at a restaurant Mark had never heard of, holding hands across a white tablecloth. Lisa getting into Ted's truck at a park and ride off the interstate. These are from the last week, Carl said. You were right. It's real. You want me to stop? No, Mark said. His voice came out flat. Keep going. Carl nodded and pulled out a second set of papers. This is where it gets ugly. I got a tap on his phone line. Don't ask how. Recorded this conversation 2 nights ago. He pressed play on a small tape recorder. Ted's voice filled the office. The policy pays out $500,000, $500,000. We just have to wait for the right moment. Lisa's voice, tinny through the speaker. He goes fishing every October, takes that boat out on Lake Travis. If something happened out there, an accident. Right, an accident. No one would question it. He's been stressed lately. I've been telling everyone how worried I am about him. Ted laughed. That cold laugh Mark had heard 1,000 times over poker hands and football games. You're scary, you know that? I love it. Carl stopped the tape. There's more. But you get the idea. Mark sat very still. The blinds shifted in a breeze from the window unit. Dust floated through the light bars. They're going to kill me, he said. It wasn't a question. They're going to try. Carl leaned back in his chair, springs creaking. Now, you've got options. We take this to the cops right now. Conspiracy to commit murder, that's serious. They'd both do time. Mark considered this. He thought about Lisa in handcuffs, Ted in an orange jumpsuit, a trial, newspapers. Neighbors watching him mow his lawn and whispering about the man whose wife tried to have him killed. "What's my other option?" he asked. Carl's expression shifted slightly. A glimmer of respect, maybe, or recognition. "You make them think they've won. Then you take everything." "Tell me how," Carl told him. It took 45 minutes. By the end, Mark's coffee had gone cold, and the shadows through the blinds had migrated halfway across the floor. He stood up, shook Carl's hand. "I'll need you to keep recording them," Mark said. "Everything. Phone calls, meetings, whatever you can get. Already planned on it." Carl handed him a card. "This is my pager. You need anything, day or night." Mark drove home through rush-hour traffic. A country station played low on the radio. Songs about heartbreak and revenge and driving through the desert at night. He didn't change the station. He's keeping it together because he finally clocked it. Betrayal isn't some one-time slip-up. It's a sickness, and the only cure is cold, hard truth. And if the people closest to him decided to turn love into a trap, he's got every right to go quiet before the storm and take control back. "Let's see what happens next." Lisa greeted him at the door. She'd been baking. The house smelled like chocolate chip cookies, his mother's recipe, the one Lisa had asked for specifically when they got engaged. "You're late," she said, kissing his cheek. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Mark said. He grabbed a cookie from the cooling rack. Still warm. Perfect. She watched him eat it with that smile she'd been wearing lately, that victorious secret smile. 43 days, he thought. That's when he took the fishing trip. Every October 19th, regular as clockwork. She knew his schedule. She'd built her murder around his habits. But 43 days was a long time. Long enough to plan, long enough to disappear. Mark spent the next 6 weeks building his own death. He withdrew cash in small amounts from ATMs around the city, never more than 200 at a time. The money went into a safety deposit box at a bank he'd never used before, under a name close enough to his own to be plausible on a glance, M. Thompson instead of Monsieur Thomas. He rented a storage unit in San Antonio, filled it with clothes, documents, his grandfather's watch, the photo albums Lisa hadn't looked at in years. He found a contact through Carl, a man who forged documents for people who needed to stop being themselves. $1,200 bought Mark a new driver's license, social security card, birth certificate. Michael Thompson, born March 3, 1958, Houston, Texas. The boat was the hardest part. He'd owned it for 5 years, a 17-foot bayliner with a temperamental motor that Lisa had always hated. Taking it out on Lake Travis was his ritual, his escape. She knew this. She was counting on it. October 18th, the night before. Mark sat at the kitchen table writing a note. He'd drafted it 4 times, getting the tone right. Depressed, but not theatrical. Exhausted, but coherent. "Lisa, I can't do this anymore. The pressure at work, the feeling that I'm not enough. Not for you, not for anyone. I'm sorry. Please don't blame yourself." Mark. He left it in the glove compartment of his truck. She'd find it eventually, after the search, after the questions. It would confirm what she'd already been telling people. Her husband was struggling. Her husband had been acting strange. October 19th. Mark woke at 4 in the morning. Lisa slept beside him, unmoving. He dressed in the dark. Fishing clothes, rubber boots, an old flannel shirt she'd threatened to throw away a dozen times. He stopped at the bedroom door and looked back at her. The woman he'd married. The woman who was planning to watch him drown and then cash a check. "Sleep well," he whispered. She didn't stir. The boat ramp at Lake Travis was empty at 5:30 in the morning. Mist rose off the water like something breathing. Mark backed the trailer down, launched the bayliner, parked the truck in plain sight. He motored out half a mile and killed the engine. Sat there in the gray dawn, listening to the water lap against the hull. Carl was waiting at a marina on the opposite shore, 3 miles south. A car parked in the lot. New plates from New Mexico. Mark opened the cooler he'd packed. Inside, packed in ice, 4 bags of pig's blood from a butcher in Fredericksburg. He'd bought them 2 weeks ago, frozen them, thawed them this morning. They smelled coppery and wrong. He poured them across the deck, on the seats, the steering wheel, a splatter pattern on the side of the hull, just visible above the waterline. Then he stripped off his flannel shirt and dragged it through the mess, left it crumpled near the bow. The boat's emergency beacon was easy to disable. A few wires. He'd practiced at home on a similar unit bought from a marine supply store. Mark stood in the center of his small boat, blood sticky on his boots, and looked at the sun rising orange over the hills. Somewhere in Austin, Lisa was still sleeping. Ted was probably dreaming of $500,000. He stepped over the side and into the cold October water. It took his breath for a moment. Then he started swimming, slow and steady, toward the far shore. Behind him, the bayliner drifted empty and bloody into the morning light. The Motel 6 outside Las Cruces, New Mexico, smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Mark paid cash for a week. The clerk didn't look up from her magazine. Room 112 had a television bolted to the dresser, a bed with a mattress that dipped in the middle, and a window facing the parking lot. Mark sat on the edge of the bed and turned on the local news. Nothing about Texas. Nothing about a missing man on a lake. He waited. On day 3, it hit the Austin stations. Carl had set up a system, a friend with a satellite dish who could pick up Texas broadcasts and relay them by phone. Mark called from a payphone outside the motel lobby and listened to the anchor's voice through the static. Authorities are searching Lake Travis for a missing Austin man after his boat was discovered adrift earlier this week. Mark Thomas, 34, was reported missing by his wife after he failed to return from a solo fishing trip. Investigators say the boat showed signs of a struggle or accident, with significant amounts of blood found on deck. A note discovered in his vehicle has led some to speculate. The anchor paused. Professional gravity, that Thomas may have taken his own life. His wife, Lisa Thomas, made an emotional appeal for information earlier today. Then Lisa's voice, shaking. Perfect. Mark was struggling. I tried to help him. I should have done more. If anyone knows anything, please call. Mark hung up, stood in the New Mexico heat with the phone still warm against his ear. A semi-truck roared past on the highway. Dust devils spun in the empty lot across the road. She was good, better than he'd expected. Over the next 2 weeks, Carl sent updates. The search was called off after 8 days. No body recovered, but enough blood to suggest fatal injury. The coroner ruled it a probable death, pending the standard waiting period. Lisa wore black to the memorial service. The memorial service. Mark heard about it secondhand. Carl attended, posing as a former co-worker. 40 people in a church neither Mark nor Lisa had ever set foot in. His mother flew in from Florida, white-haired and trembling. His sister came from Denver. They sat in the front pew while Lisa dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Ted sat 3 rows back. Appropriate distance. The supportive friend, not the lover. He delivered a eulogy about fishing trips and Sunday football and what a good man Mark had been. Carl recorded the whole thing. Mark listened to the tape that night in his motel room. Ted's voice cracking at the right moments. The congregation murmuring. His mother sobbing. He turned off the recorder and went to the window. The parking lot was empty except for a pickup truck with Arizona plates and a dog sleeping in the bed. The stars out here were different than in Austin. Brighter. Indifferent. His mother thought he was dead. His sister had flown 1,000 miles to mourn him. His colleagues, his neighbors, everyone who'd ever known him. They all believed he'd lost some invisible battle and surrendered to the dark water of Lake Travis. and Lisa had stood before them and wept. Mark pressed his forehead against the cool glass. Somewhere inside him, in a place he didn't visit often, something ached. But he'd made his choice. There was no going back now. He returned to the bed and opened a notebook, started planning the next phase. 6 weeks to the day after Mark's disappearance, the insurance company issued a check for $500,000. Carl confirmed it within hours. His contact at the company, a claims adjuster with gambling debts and flexible ethics, had watched the paperwork move through the system. Standard death benefit. No red flags. The waiting period had passed. The widow was entitled to her money. Lisa deposited it that same afternoon. Mark imagined her at the bank, signing the endorsement, sliding the check across the counter, trying not to smile too wide. The next month moved slowly. Mark had relocated to a small apartment in Albuquerque, still paying cash, still watching over his shoulder. He'd grown a beard, let his hair get longer, bought clothes at thrift stores, nothing like the button-downs and khakis he'd worn in Austin. He got a job washing dishes at a diner near the university, minimum wage under the table. The owner was a Greek immigrant named Stavros who didn't ask questions. Mark worked the night shift, scrubbing pots until his hands cracked and bled, then walking home through empty streets as the sun came up. It was penance, maybe, or just a way to stay invisible. Carl called once a week from different payphones, never the same location twice. The updates came in fragments. Lisa had quit her job. Lisa had bought a new car. Lisa had started renovating the kitchen. And then, on November 23rd, the news Mark had been waiting for. They got married, Carl said, his voice flat, just delivering facts. Courthouse ceremony this morning. No guests. She wore a blue dress. He wore a suit. I'm pretty sure you bought him for your wedding. Mark sat on his second-hand couch and stared at the water stain on the ceiling. Which suit? The gray one, with the thin stripes. Mark remembered buying that suit. Ted had needed something for a job interview and couldn't afford it. Mark had paid without thinking, told him to pay it back whenever. Ted never had. Anything else? Mark asked. They're moving into your house. Already started bringing his stuff over. My house. Her house now. Legally. Carl paused. You okay? Mark considered the question. The apartment was cold. The radiator had stopped working 2 days ago. His hands still smelled like dish soap and bleach. I'm fine, he said. Start putting together the package. Everything we have. Photos, tapes, documents. Make copies. I want it ready by December 1st. That's a week away. Is that a problem? No. Carl's voice carried something like admiration. No problem at all. Mark hung up and went to the window. Albuquerque sprawled below him, flat and brown, mountains rising purple in the distance. Snow on the peaks already. Winter coming early to the high desert. 1 more month, he thought. Let them enjoy Christmas. Let them feel safe. Then the letters would begin. December 27th. Lisa and Ted were probably still digesting leftover ham when the envelope arrived. No return address. Postmarked Tucson, Arizona, nowhere near where Mark actually was. Carl had driven 200 miles to mail it, just to be safe. Inside, a single photograph. Lisa and Ted in his truck, parked at a scenic overlook outside Austin. Her hand on his thigh, his lips on her neck. The timestamp in the corner read, April 14th, 1994. 5 months before Mark's death. 1 month after that first diary entry. Mark had a contact in Austin now, a retired postal worker Carl knew who owed him a favor. The man watched Lisa's house from his car, parked down the street, and called Mark that evening. She checked the mail around 4, the man said. Went inside, came back out 5 minutes later with something in her hand. Looked pale, looked scared. Walked to the side of the house and I couldn't see after that, but I smelled smoke about 10 minutes later. She burned it. Looks like. Mark smiled. His beard had grown in thick over the past 2 months, shot through with gray he hadn't noticed before. In the mirror behind the payphone, he barely recognized himself. "Good," he said. "We'll send the next one in a week." New Year's Day, 1995. Another envelope. This time a cassette tape and a cheap portable player, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. Lisa's voice. Ted's voice. The same conversation Carl had played for Mark months ago in his cramped office. The life insurance, the accident, the plan. The postal worker reported back that night. She played it on the porch. Then she went inside, and I could hear her yelling. Screaming, really. Couldn't make out words. The man paused. Then he came out. Ted. Got in his truck and drove off fast. Didn't come back for 2 hours. They're scared. They should be. Mark paid the man an extra $100 and told him to keep watching. Not every day. Just enough to track their movements, their moods. He wanted to know when they stopped sleeping, when they started looking over their shoulders. The third letter arrived January 15th. More photos. A timeline Carl had assembled, documenting the affair month by month, cross-referenced with Lisa's work calendar and Ted's bank statements. Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, a paper trail of betrayal leading right to Mark's empty boat. This time, Lisa didn't burn anything. She called a lawyer, but it was too late for lawyers. The copies were already in the mail. Detective Margaret Chen had worked fraud cases for 11 years, but she'd never received evidence quite like this. The package arrived at Austin Police Headquarters on January 18th. Thick manila envelope, no return address, postmarked from El Paso. Inside, photographs, cassette tapes, typed documents with dates and details and allegations that read like a crime novel. A note on top, handwritten in block letters, check the insurance claim, check the widow, check her new husband. Mark Thomas didn't kill himself. Chen spent 4 hours reviewing the contents. Then she called her captain. They listened to the tapes together in his office, the door closed, the blinds drawn. The insurance company received an identical package the same day. Their fraud division opened a file by noon. By 5 o'clock, 2 investigators were on a plane to Austin. Lisa found out 3 days later. 2 detectives at her door, badges out, questions ready. Chen watched her face as she answered. The micro-expressions, the hesitations, the way her eyes darted toward the living room where Ted sat pretending to read a magazine. "We're just following up on some new information," Chen said. "About your husband's death." "My husband drowned," Lisa said, her voice steady, rehearsed. "It was ruled an accident. Actually, it was ruled a probable death. No body was recovered. And we've received some interesting materials suggesting it might not have been accidental at all." Lisa's jaw tightened. "What kind of materials?" "I'm not at liberty to say. But I'd recommend you get a lawyer, Mrs. Thomas." Chen left a card. Walked back to her unmarked car. Sat there for 10 minutes, watching the house. The curtains moved, 2 shadows arguing behind them, arms raised, voices muffled but sharp. Chen wrote in her notebook, "Subjects appear agitated. Recommend surveillance." The insurance company moved faster. Civil suit filed January 25th, alleging fraud in the death claim. $500,000. Lisa's bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. She hired a defense attorney, expensive, with a downtown office and a reputation for getting guilty people acquitted. He filed motions, demanded discovery, attacked the anonymous evidence as inadmissible, tainted, possibly fabricated. But the tapes were real. Voice analysis confirmed it within a week. Lisa's voice, Ted's voice, discussing murder. Mark followed all of this from Albuquerque. Carl sent updates every other day now. The case was building momentum. The dominoes were falling. He quit his dishwashing job, started packing his few possessions. Soon, he'd need to be closer. Soon, he'd need to come back from the dead. Ted Calloway had never been good under pressure. In college, he'd failed 2 exams he knew the material for. Blanked completely, staring at the paper, unable to write a single word. In job interviews, he sweated through his shirts. During arguments, he backed down. Lisa had always been the strong one. Lisa made plans. Lisa stayed calm. But Lisa wasn't here right now. Lisa was meeting with lawyers and accountants, trying to save what was left of their money, their house, their freedom. And Ted was alone in the kitchen of Mark's house. His house now, technically, except it never felt like his, staring at a business card on the table. Detective Margaret Chen, Austin Police Department. She'd come alone this time. Yesterday morning. Asked to speak with Ted privately. Lisa had refused, but Chen had looked at Ted with those sharp, patient eyes and said, "You can talk to me now, or you can talk to me later at the station. Your choice." He'd talked. Not much. Not anything incriminating. But enough that Chen smiled when she left. That thin smile that said she knew more than she was letting on. Now the card sat on the table like a bomb, and Ted's phone was ringing. He answered. His lawyer. Young guy, not as expensive as Lisa's. "Ted, we need to talk about your options." "What options?" "The insurance company is pushing hard. They're talking to the DA about criminal charges. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud." "These are serious, Ted. We're talking 15 to 20 years. The kitchen seemed to shrink around him. Mark's kitchen. Mark's tiles on the floor. Mark's curtains on the windows. Mark's coffee maker on the counter. Ted had helped him pick out that coffee maker at a Target 3 years ago. "What do I do?" Ted whispered. "You cooperate. You tell them everything. You testify against Lisa in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'll never forgive me. She's going to prison either way. The question is whether you go with her." Ted hung up, sat in the silence of the house. Outside, a dog barked. A car drove past. He thought about Lisa's face when they'd first started meeting in secret. The thrill of it. The way she made him feel chosen, special, like he'd been waiting his whole life for someone to see him the way she did. Then he thought about the blood on Mark's boat, the empty casket at the funeral, the way Lisa had practiced her eulogy in the bathroom mirror, adjusting her expression until it looked right. He called his lawyer back. "What do I have to do?" "Come into the station. Tell them everything. From the beginning. When? Now. Tonight. Before Lisa's lawyers find out." Ted grabbed his keys, walked to the door, stopped. On the wall, a photograph from Mark's wedding. Mark and Lisa cutting the cake. Ted in the background, glass raised, grinning. He left the lights on and drove to the police station. Lisa was eating breakfast when the call came. Scrambled eggs. Whole wheat toast. Coffee with exactly 2 sugars, the way she'd always taken it, even before Mark, even before Ted, even before any of this. The attorney's voice was clipped. Professional panic. Ted made a deal. Lisa set down her fork. The eggs went cold on the plate. What kind of deal? Full cooperation. Testimony against you in exchange for probation. No prison time. He's already given a statement. The kitchen light seemed too bright. Lisa reached for her coffee cup, but her hand was shaking and she knocked it over instead. Brown liquid spread across the white tablecloth, seeping into the fabric like a stain that would never wash out. When? Last night. He went to the police station around 9. Talked for 4 hours. My contact says he gave them everything, Lisa. The affair, the insurance plan, the conversations about making it look like an accident. Lisa didn't speak. Couldn't speak. The coffee dripped off the edge of the table onto the floor. She watched it fall, drop by drop, and thought about Ted's face the first time he told her he loved her. A parking lot behind a movie theater. Summer heat. His hands trembling when he touched her. "Lisa," the attorney said, "are you there?" "I'm here. We need to discuss our strategy. The prosecution is going to move fast now. They'll probably seek an indictment within the week." Lisa hung up. She sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet. Ted's clothes were still in the closet. His razor still sat on the bathroom sink. His coffee mug, the one with the stupid fishing joke on it, still hung on the hook by the stove. She picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang 6 times before he answered. "You coward," she said. Her voice came out flat. "Dead. You pathetic, spineless coward." "Lisa, Ted's voice cracked. "I didn't have a choice. They were going to charge me with conspiracy to commit murder. I could have gotten 20 years. So you sold me out. I told the truth." The truth. Lisa laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "You want to talk about truth? You begged me to do this. You said Mark didn't deserve me. You said we'd be happy. You said—" "I know what I said. And now you're going to stand up in court and pretend you were some innocent victim, some lovesick fool who got manipulated by the evil wife." Silence on the line. Ted breathing. Lisa listening to him breathe and remembering all the nights she'd fallen asleep to that sound. "I'm sorry," Ted whispered. Lisa hung up again, threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered into pieces, plastic and wires scattering across Mark's hardwood floor. Mark's house, Mark's life, which she'd tried to steal, and which was now stealing hers. She walked to the window and looked out at the street. A car she didn't recognize was parked across the road. Someone sitting inside, watching. They were always watching now. The trial began on March 4th, 1995. Courtroom 4B of the Travis County Courthouse. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights humming overhead, 17 rows of gallery seating, nearly full, reporters in the back with notebooks, curious locals who'd followed the case in the papers, Mark's mother and sister in the 3rd row, still dressed in mourning colors, still clutching tissues. Lisa sat at the defense table in a gray suit her attorney had chosen, conservative, remorseful. The jury, 8 women, 4 men, studied her face the way people study traffic accidents. The prosecution called witness after witness. Carl Reeves testified about the surveillance. Detective Chen played the tapes. An insurance investigator explained the fraud in clinical detail. A handwriting expert confirmed Lisa had signed the claim forms. Ted took the stand on day 3. He looked smaller than Lisa remembered, hunched. His eyes never met hers as he described their affair, their plans, their conversations about Mark's fishing trips and life insurance policies. The defense attorney cross-examined him for 2 hours, called him a liar, a manipulator, a man trying to save himself. Ted admitted to all of it. Yes, he was a liar. Yes, he was trying to save himself. But he was telling the truth now. The jury believed him. Lisa could see it in their faces. Day 4. Final day of testimony. The prosecution called its last witness. "We call Michael Thompson," the prosecutor announced. The courtroom doors opened. Lisa turned. Everyone turned. A man walked down the center aisle. Tall, thin, a beard that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Clothes she didn't recognize. But the walk, that slightly uneven gait from a college basketball injury, she would know that walk anywhere. Mark. Someone in the gallery gasped. Lisa's attorney dropped his pen. It clattered against the table and rolled onto the floor. Nobody picked it up. Mark Thomas walked past his mother without looking at her, past his sister, past the reporters scrambling for their notebooks. He reached the witness stand, raised his right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Lisa's hands gripped the edge of the table. Her knuckles went white. Mark sat down, looked at the prosecutor, didn't look at Lisa. "Please state your full name for the record, Mark David Thomas. And can you explain to the jury why you're alive when you were declared dead 7 months ago?" Mark took a breath. The courtroom was silent except for the air conditioning. "Because my wife and her lover were planning to kill me," he said. "Faking my death was the only way to prove it, the only way to survive." The prosecutor nodded. "Tell us everything." And Mark did. 4 hours. That's how long Mark testified. He started with the open marriage conversation, the jasmine candles, the rehearsed pitch. He described finding the diary, reading those entries, feeling his world collapse in 60 seconds. He explained how he'd hired Carl, heard the recordings, learned about the insurance plot. He walked the jury through his disappearance, the pig's blood from a butcher in Fredericksburg, the disabled beacon, the cold October water of Lake Travis, the months in New Mexico and Albuquerque, washing dishes, growing a beard, waiting. The defense attorney tried to paint Mark as the villain, a manipulative husband who'd abandoned his family, traumatized his mother, wasted police resources, a man playing games with people's lives for revenge. Mark answered every question calmly. "You could have gone to the police," the attorney pressed, "when you first heard the recordings. Why didn't you?" "Because they were planning to kill me during a fishing trip," Mark said. "Meant to look like an accident. My word against theirs. No proof except some recordings that might not hold up in court. So I gave them exactly what they wanted, my death. And then I gave the police what they needed to prosecute. You think you're clever, don't you?" Mark looked at the attorney, then at Lisa. First time their eyes met since he'd walked in. "I think I'm alive," he said, "and I think your client is going to prison." Lisa's face had gone pale during his testimony, washed out, old. She'd stopped whispering to her attorney somewhere around hour 2, just sat there, watching, as the man she'd married and plotted to murder dismantled her defense, word by word. Closing arguments took most of day 5. The prosecution emphasized the recordings, the plan, the cold calculation of pretending to grieve while cashing the check. The defense argued entrapment, emotional manipulation, a marriage that had pushed Lisa to desperate measures. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 14 minutes. Lisa stood when they returned. Her legs barely held her. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, the foreperson read, "We find the defendant guilty." Murmurs in the gallery. Lisa swayed. On the charge of insurance fraud, "We find the defendant guilty." On the charge of filing a false police report, "We find the defendant guilty." Lisa sat down heavily. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. She shrugged it off. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. The judge, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and no patience for explanations, looked at Lisa for a long moment before speaking. "Mrs. Thomas, you plotted to murder your husband for money. When you believed he was dead, you collected that money without hesitation. You remarried within weeks. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This court sentences you to 15 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice." Lisa's mother cried in the gallery. Lisa didn't. She stood straight, chin up, as the bailiffs approached with handcuffs. Mark watched from the back row. He'd shaved his beard that morning, put on a suit he'd bought in Austin after returning. He looked like himself again. Almost. Lisa turned before they let her out, found his face in the crowd. "I hope you're happy," she mouthed. Mark said nothing. He was already walking toward the exit. 5 years later, Northern California. A town small enough that everyone knew everyone, but quiet enough that nobody asked too many questions. Mark's house sat on 2 acres outside town. A farmhouse built in the 1920s, renovated enough to have plumbing and internet, but old enough to creak in the wind. A porch wrapped around 2 sides, oak trees in the front yard, a vegetable garden in the back, and a dog. A yellow lab named Chester, the one Lisa had always complained about. Too much shedding, too much energy, too much love. Mark had retrieved him from his sister after the trial. Chester didn't seem to remember the years apart. Just wagged his tail and followed Mark everywhere, the way he always had. October 19th, the anniversary. Mark sat on his porch as the sun went down. The sky turned orange, then purple, then black. Stars came out one by one, the way they do in places without city lights to drown them. He poured a glass of whiskey, held it up to the darkness. Carl Reeves had died 2 years ago. Heart attack in his office, surrounded by manila folders and cassette tapes. His obituary mentioned nothing about the Thomas case. Mark sent flowers anonymously. Ted had fled to Mexico a week after Lisa's sentencing. Last Mark heard, he was living in a small town near Oaxaca, tending bar, telling tourists he used to be somebody. The probation violation meant he could never come back. Lisa was in a women's prison outside Houston. Mark didn't know what she did there, how she passed the time, whether she'd changed. He didn't want to know. In 10 more years, she'd be eligible for parole. He'd cross that bridge when he came to it. His mother had forgiven him. Eventually. Took almost a year before she'd speak to him again. Now they talked every Sunday. She'd visited the farmhouse twice, said it was peaceful, said she was glad he'd found some peace himself. Mark wasn't sure he'd call it peace, more like stillness, the absence of something bad rather than the presence of something good. Chester put his head on Mark's knee. Mark scratched behind his ears. He never remarried, never even dated. There'd been a woman in town who sold vegetables at the farmer's market, smiled at him every Saturday, lingered at his table, but he couldn't make himself take that step. The part of him that trusted people, that believed in forever, had died on a boat on Lake Travis. The rest of him was still learning how to live without it. The whiskey was smooth, expensive, the kind you sipped, not shot. Mark raised his glass to the night sky, to no one, to everyone, to surviving, he said. Chester wagged his tail. The October wind stirred the oak trees. Somewhere in the dark, an owl called. Mark finished his drink and went inside and locked the door behind him, the way he did every night, out of habit, out of caution, out of the knowledge that some doors, once closed, should never be opened again. Trust in a relationship isn't some cute extra you sprinkle on top of love. It's the foundation. Start chewing it up with lies, and everything else turns into set dressing. When a woman, like Lisa, tries to retroactively legitimize cheating with pretty buzzwords about freedom, honesty, and being progressive, what she's really doing is dumping responsibility on the man. If you agree, it's on you. If you don't, you're controlling or close-minded. Guys in that spot usually swing to one of two extremes, blind faith or hardcore policing. But both are dead ends, because relationships don't survive on inspections or constant compromise. They survive on clear boundaries and a straight-up conversation. Mark's story shows the other extreme, too. When betrayal turns someone into an ice-cold strategist, he might survive and even win, but still lose on the inside, losing the ability to trust again or build real closeness. In a couple, it's not just about don't cheat. It's also about not playing characters. Don't sell your partner a convenient story. Don't mess with their feelings. Don't turn love into a transaction. Real maturity between a man and a woman is talking through desires, fears, and doubts before it turns into confession diaries, double lives, and how do we stage this so it looks okay? Because freedom without responsibility is just selfishness, and marriage without honesty is a dangerous illusion that eventually collapses, leaving nothing but suspicion and loneliness. So yeah, that's the take. What do you think about cheating in marriage and who's responsible for it? Drop your thoughts in the comments under this video and let's talk it out. And for now, I'm signing off. See you soon, my dear viewers.